So the slaughter is the very last part, you know.
How do they do that?
Well, right now they're just like in the cases of Egypt and Kenya, they're just dying on ice. Yeah, so it could take hours for some species. In the case of catfish, they breathe out of water, so they can take days. You can go to the fish markets and even see them alive. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done there, you know. So the conversation is very different in this part of the world and in Asia and stuff, where like it's not even on their minds that fish suffer, you know, or that aquatic animals suffer.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Changemakers podcast. Today's episode features Wasseem. He is the founder and director of Ethical Seafood Research, ESR, which is an applied research organization that's working to improve the welfare of animals in aquatic food systems, particularly in low and middle income countries. Now, I got to meet Wasseem at the AVA Summit in Nairobi in Kenya back in July. I really enjoyed getting to sit down with him and hearing all about his work. For me, the fishing industry is not something I know a lot about, especially in the regions that he's focused on, like Egypt, Kenya, and East Africa. So the conversation was super interesting to me to learn about the industry standards, and I hope you find it interesting as well. Wasseem does come from like a welfare point of view, as he has a welfare organization. So as an animal rights activist personally, we had a few like abolitionist versus welfare discussions in there. So yeah, in this episode, Wasseem takes us behind the scenes of what fish farming actually looks like. We talk about the welfare assessment app that ESR has been rolling out across fish farms in Egypt and Kenya. We talk about the brutal reality of how fish are currently slaughtered and how they're working to improve on that method. And we get into some really fascinating and honestly quite shocking corners of the industry, you know, from caviar and sturgeon farming to bluefin tuna. We talk about the salmon industry, and super interesting also the fishmeal problem that's actually affecting food security in parts of Africa. So yeah, all in all, I really enjoyed talking to Wasseem. And if you want to learn more about ESR's work, you can visit their website. I put the link to their website in the description of this episode. So yeah, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Wasseem from Ethical Seafood Research on the Changemakers podcast. All right, so hi Wasseem, thank you so much for being here. I'd love if you could give like a short introduction about yourself and the work that you do.
Thank you for having me. It's great to have a chance to talk about some of the things that we're most passionate about. So I'm Wasseem Emam. I'm the founder and director of Ethical Seafood Research. We advocate for better living conditions for fish that are used in the food systems. We're heavily focused on Egypt, which is where I'm from, but we also do work in other countries. And I'm personally based in Scotland, between Spain and Scotland. So I know a lot about fish in other parts of the world, but we try to work in parts of the world where there's really the sector still hasn't taken off in the same way. When we feel we have a chance to do more to stop things taking off in the same way that they have in other places.
That's amazing. Didn't know you were the founding director, by the way. So that's very cool. How long ago did you found ESR?
So during COVID, around 2021, I just come back from some field work in Egypt where I was doing my PhD as part of a Scottish program, and I just learned about fish welfare really, and then realized there was so much work that needed to be done. No one was doing anything in that part of the world, and there was funders who were interested in funding that sort of work. So I kind of got pushed into it in some ways, but I didn't really want to found something. I just wanted to do cool projects. But then somehow you end up with a team, and all this other stuff happens, and I think it kind of happened organically, right? I mean, yeah.
That's amazing. Super cool. I'd love to dive then deep into the fish welfare stuff because you know a lot about what happens in the industry standards, especially here in this region. I don't know if you want to focus on country specific, maybe some projects you're working on, or it's the industry standards that you're currently struggling, like the main big ones, I'd say, industry standards that you're currently fighting against for fishes.
I mean, I guess for the sake of your audience or your listeners or what, both. So I would just clarify that, people when they think of, so we're talking about aquaculture, not fishing at all, not wild caught aquaculture, not wild caught fish at all. So that's what we focus on. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. So within that, people usually think that fish farming is like these big round cages in the sea that they imagine, and that's actually a very small subsection of the sector. Most aquaculture or fish farming is actually ponds, like these inland, ponds of water, really, where you have fish. And I would say it's a vast majority in China, India, Indonesia, Vietnam, Egypt. That's a lot of what aquaculture actually looks like.
What kind of ponds?
Well, we call them earthen ponds. So it's like just they dig holes in the ground, like huge ones, and they put fish in there, or shrimps, or there's different. You can use ponds for many species, but I was just clarifying that first of all, it's not fishing; it's aquaculture. Just for the sake of people who don't know, and within that, there's inland and marine. We work on inland because that's the majority, and then we work on like freshwater species. So in this part of the world, since you mentioned this part of the world, it's tilapia, it's catfish, it's there's some trout as well, but there's carp. These are the species that are commonly farmed here. Most Europeans don't even know about these species because they're warm water, right? So industry standards again. So there's really a big discrepancy between the small players and the very large one. There isn't that much like commercialization of the sector. So it's very fragmented. Practices are still very rudimentary or basic or traditional, if you want to call them that way. The industry calls it extensive or semi-intensive, but there's very few intensive farms, which is what people think of factory farming, let's say, in other parts of the world and other food sectors. Okay, we're a bit opportunistic because obviously we don't have the luxury of being able to work with anyone and everyone. We're dependent on funds after all, donations as well. But we look at where we have opportunities. So in Zanzibar, for example, we had the government themselves were keen to work with us to develop an aquaculture strategy. They wanted to move from seaweed farming to fish farming. When we were aware of that, and we said, okay, well, we'll help you work on a strategy, but in return for like putting in high welfare principles. That just came out of sort of discussions. It wasn't something we had planned. And we thought we had an opportunity to affect change. Now, what was exciting about that, which I think your viewers and listeners will appreciate, is that actually we made a case for why seaweed farming should be the thing that they focus on, because they have a much more they're better suited towards that. For one, they're also clearly already doing a lot of that, and it's empowering women, and it's creating a lot of livelihoods. So there's no real reason for them to move into fish farming, especially high value species, and it's all for exporting and not for food security. So we were able to embed those principles into the strategy. Apart from that, when we work with industry, we try to go for what they call high level champions. So if we can get some of the bigger players to adopt it, the smaller players usually follow along. Not always, but So in Kenya, we're trying to get Victory Farms to adopt this approach. That is an app that we have. I could talk more about that, but so if they start using the app in their work to assess the welfare status of the fish that they farm, we know that we believe that other smaller players will also adopt that approach and will incorporate the word, even the concept of welfare, into their work, is something that's currently totally missing.
Could we get back to what happened with that seaweed farm? Did they were they interested at all? Did they decide to do fish farming instead, or?
So Zanzibar and just even the many coastal parts of Tanzania. So for the people who don't know, Zanzibar is off the coast of Tanzania. It's a couple of islands there. It's semi-autonomous part of Tanzania, but all of the coast of Tanzania and the whole coast actually is well suited to seaweed farming. So it's a big livelihood activity that they're already doing. And the reason people are thinking about fish is because they think it's higher value, but actually what they have not focused enough on is how can we add more value to seaweed itself. So now there's products like carrageenan, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like one of these like nutraceuticals that is used in like, I think it's a beauty product, but
The brand called. You mean the brand? You mean the brand name, Carrageenan?
it's a product. So not a product, sorry. It's like chemical or some kind of nutraceutical, something that you get from like seaweed. It's extracted and it's used in like, I'm sure it's used in beauty products, but it's not a sector I know too much about. But I'm just saying, so things like that is what keeps the value of seaweed, like moves people more into the sector and allows them to grow the sector more, because it was a low value crop and they were just selling it raw to China, basically. That makes sense. Yeah.
Could you share then about the app, since you mentioned it? Would love to know more about that. Is that part of your one of your strategies to help improve the welfare?
Yeah, so we didn't actually develop the app ourselves, so I can't take credit for that, but we are very close partners with the organization that developed it. They're called FAI Farms. They're a UK-based consultancy that works with various food-producing sectors. So for tilapia, they developed, well, actually multiple species, but for tilapia, they developed an app that makes it very easy for farmers and people who visit the farms to get a quick snapshot of how the welfare of the fish that they're in the ponds or cages or whatever are how they're doing. And so you just enter some basic parameters, like how's your water quality, how much you stocked, and sort of just the size of the farm and stuff, and it gives you an indicator, a welfare score, and based on that score, it also gives you recommendations for how to improve. And then you can reassess, and based on that, you improve. Sorry, go ahead. And then we've rolled that out to many farms. Go ahead.
No, just wanted to ask like how you finish your sentence and I'll continue.
And I was gonna say, so actually, we started rolling it out in Egypt. That was a big program of ours last year. We reached 1,000 farms, which is huge. It's like that's 15% of the entire sector, and the Egyptian tilapia sector is the third largest in the world. So
15 or 15?
15, yeah, exactly. So it's quite an achievement. We were very proud. That's like 260 million individual fish that we hopefully improved the lives of. So we're very proud of that program. Now we've already brought that to Kenya, so that's what we've been doing this year. So my colleague Faisal was leading on that. So the approach we used here is to train the extension officers. So that's like government ministry extension services that go out to farms. We're trying to get them to use that approach. And so far it's been quite good. We have to stay on top of that a bit to remind them why it's useful and why it helps them. But it's been promising so far.
Very cool. Congrats on that. I had one question that came up in my head was like, how transparent are these farmers with their practices? Like how if this app like judges them on their welfare, how true is it? What's being on the app, and how can you kind of monitor that? And like, do you do site visits often? And
Yeah. So actually, it's a question we get all the time, especially when we present on our work. So that's what we did yesterday when we talked about our work. One of the questions in the app was about that. So what we do is we rarely put the app in what we do. I mean, of course, they're welcome to download it, but we don't, like, these 1,000 farms weren't assessed by the farmers themselves. That was our team who were naturally going out, like veterinarians, aquaculture practitioners, people who are have good connections with farmers, and as part of their work, they were using the app. So it wasn't them themselves at the farm assessing themselves. So we always show the farmer how it's done and doing the process. But for that, it was a pilot study really that we were doing. We used our own team, and in Kenya, it's extension officers who are not. They don't have an incentive to be biased, right? They're actually trying to get the farmer to improve. So they're like government officers. Yeah.
because like how is it's not undercover footage, right? It's not like, so they could like show you the best possible version, and then their standards might differ. What I mean, that's just my animal rights stuff talking.
So I think what you're saying definitely applies in like a global north context, right? Because welfare actually matters in that part of the world. If you have an undercover investigation,
Yeah.
it leads to like action being taken. But like
Right.
if you go to farms in the global south, they're openly doing practices that would be. You see what I'm saying? Like they don't see the way that they catch fish, like it's called harvesting, but the way they harvest fish is like brutal. But they don't even see it as brutal because it's just how it's done. So actually, that's another program that we have. We're trying to improve, quote unquote, harvest because it's definitely it's an area that can be improved. It's a win-win because the farmers win, the consumers win, the fish obviously win. So I could talk a bit more about that.
I would love that. I would love that view, but let's not call it harvest.
Well, it's called massive capture in the welfare world where they are trying not to objectify animals. They call it massive capture, if you like.
But do they not kill this?
They do. Slaughter? Yeah. But harvest is the whole process, right? So you're lowering the water column. In the case of a pond, you're you're also fasting the fish. So
Wait, start from like the whole process of how they're killed.
Pond farming. A few days before, minimum 1 day, maybe more, you'll start withdrawing feed. So you start feeding the fish. So that's called fasting. So after you fast,
Or starving.
yeah, some people call starvation, food deprivation is many words. Yeah, depending who you're talking about. So I'm just telling you the industry's terms. All right. So let's say feed withdrawal. and then you start lowering the water column so you can gradually so the fish gradually get, I guess, acclimate a bit, and then you use nets to remove them from the ponds, or you could use pumps if you're maybe more advanced system. But
Is this the high welfare standard? This is the what's currently being done.
so they remove from the water in these like nets. They're crowded in the nets, and they're usually taken to like a sorting table or some place where they can be sorted according to size, according to species. If you're doing polyculture, where you have multiple species being farmed, and then they're put on ice, or in more advanced systems, you might have what they call ice slurry. That's actually what we're trying to do, but I'll talk about that in a second. But they usually just put on ice. So like you put ice, a layer of ice, and then some fish, and then another layer of ice, and they're kind of crammed. Of course, they're still careful not to ruin the product, so they don't like treat them that bad. But being out of water for fish is already stressful, and then being crowded like that, and the water being lowered, everything is like a very stressful process for them. So the least we can do is at least try to improve that part of the process. So slaughter is the very last part.
How do they do that?
Well, right now, they're just like in cases of Egypt and Kenya, they're just dying on ice. Yeah, so it could take hours for some species. In the case of catfish, they breathe out of water, so they can take days. You can go to the fish markets and even see them alive. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done there. So the conversation is very different in this part of the world and in Asia and stuff, where like it's not even on their minds that fish suffer. Or that aquatic animals suffer.
So, are you trying to promote a way to kill them faster? Kind of.
So initially, we got funded to actually bring in electrical stunning. So we were gonna try to bring in these like machines that they can use once they take the fish out of the water. They put them immediately into the stunners. They're stunned, and then they're put on ice. And so ice is a slaughter method, and the machine electrically stuns them like a kind of, well, some people call it anesthetic. Some people call it
Is it effective?
it can be effective, yeah. So one of the reasons we've pivoted away from that is because we realized that in the case of Egypt, they actually need to there's so many other things happening before the fish are removed that are stressful, and that the ice, we don't do the ice slurry method at all. So they, on just putting them on dry ice, they can regain consciousness, which is probably a worse outcome than the current format or the techniques.
So you're adapting it based on country, kind of your strategy.
Exactly. So we're actually first starting by introducing ice slurry, or like testing if farmers can do ice slurry.
What's ice slurry?
Yeah, exactly. So I was gonna clarify that. So ice slurry refers to like water with ice. So like let's say they have a big bucket, huge bucket, and they put ice and water in there. So that lowers the freezing point. It makes it very cold, so the fish are immersed in there, and within seconds they lose consciousness, like 30 seconds. And then if you take it out of that and put them on ice for preservation, they're dead. So that's the way of slaughter.
Okay.
It's not a recognized humane method of stunning, but it's a recognized humane method of slaughter if you stun the fish. So we're kind of not, I don't want to say cheating, but we're like, if I think of it as a pathway towards humane slaughter, or less suffering, this is a much bigger improvement on the current status. Yeah.
So it would add the ice slurry and the stunning. So those are two. You would combine that for the ideal kind of scenario.
Yeah, exactly. Or I don't want to like be gruesome for your audience, but like you can cut the gills of the fish, you can hit them on the head. There's many other things you can do. Yeah, but the most humane is to put them in ice.
Yeah.
After they've stunned. Yeah.
Okay. So you stun them, and then the ice slurry, so they live within 30 seconds, and then they're icefully dead. Which right now they're just going straight to the ice, alive and suffering for days sometimes. Okay, understood. Horrific, first of all.
You didn't want to go there for your audience, but
No, but it's important to talk about, and of course, like as vegans and animal advocates, we don't want fish to die at all, right? We're trying to prevent fish from being farmed or harmed, in that sense, farmed with a little h, harmed, in general. And then just wanted to talk to you more about that in the sense that since your organization is animal welfare focused and not animal rights, then is there any is it not hard for you that the fact that these fish are still being killed no matter what, kind of, or you're just kind of happy that at least they're suffering is improved. Like, what's your stance on like that?
You mean my personal stance or like ESR stance?
I would say your personal, because for me, I like, if I were to share my personal stance, is that I want to see a world where fish are beings who are respected and not farmed. As we can all survive and thrive on a plant-based diet, we can eat amazing fish-free foods, and like, obviously animal welfare initiatives are really great. They are like, I'm so happy that your organization exists to help the suffering be less. For sure, for sure. It's just that it's still sad that we're talking about ways to kill them. You get what I mean? So what's your take? Like, how do you stand on this issue with what you do, and kind of like that type of thing?
So I have to admit that I myself have changed my views a lot in the recent years because I wasn't really part of this movement. Like I would never have shared a stage with vegans some years ago, and I'm constantly questioning things that I've held. I think maybe because of my upbringing as an Egyptian Muslim, even though it wasn't like a typical upbringing, but we still have these ideas that animals were made for food. So I think I've questioned a lot of that over the years and questioned my own beliefs. So I still think, I mean, animal, okay, for our work, the word animal rights and where we work scares people, Either they laugh at you or they just, don't want to talk to you. I had someone walk out of a meeting a few weeks ago when I said to him that, we wanted to see less fish being farmed, not even talking about, animal rights. So we have to be careful a bit not to alienate people if we want to have impact, right? So you can be antagonistic and be an activist, or you can work with industry. And I think we feel like our strength is working with industry because we understand the technical parts. But I I don't ever like to go to what they call a harvest. That no, yeah. So I'm gonna have to go to a lot over the next year to take samples and stuff. But I don't look forward to that at all.
How was that experience? Have you done it often, like visiting?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there was a part of my PhD research that was focused on that, and we went to a lot of harvests again. A lot of these events, and we counted, looked at various parameters. Let's say, so I have seen a few, but
And do you see them suffering?
for sure. I mean, the thing is, you can see them flapping around for ages, and that's a sign of stress. But by the way, like, so compared to like wild capture fisheries, and maybe your viewers and audience will also appreciate that, I still think aquaculture is a huge improvement because the way they're caught in like nets off in like the sea, it's much more horrific. There's huge numbers and like a lot of them are crushed, and there's a lot of animals like that are what they call bycatch. They're not even trying to be caught, that they get caught. That, like, to me, wild capture fisheries, when I've been on a boat that actually lifts a net, it's horrible. I had that a lot more.
Can consumers know whether their fish are like wild caught? Is there a way? Because actually have no idea if the fish that people buy, if they see it, whether it's farmed fish or not. Like, is there a distinct consumer? Do the industries market that?
Yeah.
Like,
So there's always incentives. So first of all, there's certification labels. So I like when we get asked in this kind of context, like how do we know if it's good or bad, or how do we avoid the worst? I say certification labels at least give you some indication. So if in the case of aquaculture, there's a couple of big labels. There's ASC, Aquaculture Stewardship Council, and MSC. That's for wild caught fisheries, but for the ASC and BAP, which is Best Aquaculture Practices. So those two are like a top tier of certification. So if you see that on a product, you can be at least somewhat assured that your farmed fish have been, farmed in a way that's at least adheres to some standards, including welfare. But in the case of wild caught fisheries, welfare is not part of it, but sustainability is a stock that is well, they call them stocks, but that's not a good word either. But is that population of fish that they're catching from, is it one that's sustainably managed? And then there's things like, our.
but how much of that is true versus marketing?
So I did actually work with ASC at some point. I can tell you that they do their best, given the context, to actually push the industry towards higher standards. But there's always going to be people who cheat. There's always going to be and maybe a lack of ambition. But they do use third-party auditors. This is where undercover investigation comes in. Any farms that are certified are found to be violating the terms of their certification, they'll get stripped of the certification. It'll be very hard for them to get recertified. So if I was an investigator, that's probably one thing I'd focus on. But I will say that this is very much a question for the global north. So like in yeah, because in many parts of the world there isn't like you'll know exactly which species are farmed and which species are not farmed. Wild caught, oily fish like sardine, mackerels, all these can only be wild caught.
And shrimp?
No,
Shrimp have farm.
yeah, but they're not oily. I mean, the oil is part of what oily.
Yeah, what's that?
That's actually the good stuff, like the fatty. So you've never eaten fish in your life.
No, I have. I hated it because I'm a Pisces. So as a kid, I was like, I would use that as an excuse. I didn't like the taste of fish, but I use that as an excuse that like, I don't like, I don't want to. I'm a fish, so I don't want to eat fish because I'm a Pisces. But that was just an excuse. I just never liked the taste of fish. But I do know a lot of people eat fish, especially because they might not eat like red meat or white meat. They might eat cows or chickens, and then they're like when they decrease their meat, they go from cows to chickens and then from chickens to fish. And then fish are the last ones that people are like, they're so disconnected to fish because they're so different aquatic animals. So therefore, like they, like fish are still most commonly eaten, I would say.
Pescatarianism, right? Or
Yeah. So no, I just, sorry, what was the question?
pescatarian.
Yeah. Yeah. Like just in general, that when people go from, like fish is the last thing that they leave, and then it'll be like cheese and then vegan. But I forgot what I was gonna ask.
So I was just saying to you that oily fish are basically like mackerel, sardines, tuna. They're all the ones that have like strong flavors, as opposed to white fish or like mild fish. So most inland fish are not that oily, but the ones that are in the marine environment tend to be because they have to use. I don't want to get to the biology of it, but like or the physiology actually, but to be able to navigate depths in the water, they use the certain physiological things that makes them oilier, basically. Yeah, and that's part of the reason why people eat them because they're actually more nutritious. Yeah,
But they're all wild caught with.
absolutely. So if you see something like a mackerel, 100% it can't be farmed. Octopus can't be farmed.
Octopus are very smart.
Yeah, and now they're trying to farm them, but I'm saying until recently it was like impossible to farm them, right? Yeah. Oh, you don't know about the octopus stuff? Wow.
No.
That's probably one of the biggest campaigns the activists are working on now in this space. Yeah. So there's a large Spanish seafood company, a household name really, that's now trying to open the first octopus farm in Spain. And the activists are really
Yeah, I do remember something about it, but what's the progress been?
well, they've actually been successful in halting or slowing down the progress. Like they've got them like stuck in all kind of bureaucratic processes, which is I guess good because more insight is there. No more people. The government is having a deeper look at the process and whether it should go ahead or not. But the problem is so much EU money went into like actually funding the research behind that. So I find it very hard to imagine that octopus never get farmed because in many ways the government see it as an inevitability that aquaculture grows. That I know, it's exactly the kind of thing you guys don't want to hear about, right? Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to hear about it, but it's good that we to know about it. Of course, yeah. Like, it's horrific. Of course, we want to see a world where we're we're literally going the opposite way of what we are trying to achieve as activists. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing the fishing industry practice. That's what I wanted to know most about, is like the fishing industry practices for this region. For me, like I know more about like the West and what's been like documented in Seaspiracy in like the documentaries. I know like that salmon farming, for example, is also very bad, like the way that salmon currently is farmed, and that like there's a bunch of diseases within the factory farms, like all of that stuff. But I guess you're saying the factory farms, that all those consequences of the factory farms that don't apply to the fish in the ponds that you're saying, or like does it kind of overlap? Like, are there any like, because obviously you're saying that pond fishes farm. What are they called? Pond fish.
Yeah, inland fish.
Inland fishing is kind of better than like the wild caught, but I would say like, if I know the factory farming of the fish, then I also know how bad that is. Like, is there anything more you can say about the inland fishing?
Yeah. So I think I stay away from the word factory farming when it comes to aquaculture, just because we don't really know what that looks like. Fish can naturally be congregate in large and like they like a shoal, for example. So it's hard to say that just because there's so many in one space that they're suffering.
But you know what I mean? Okay,
I
have you
do,
seen
I
the
do, I
salmon
do, I do.
farms
Yeah,
with,
yeah, yeah.
with
So what I was gonna say to you when I said to you that, for example, I changed my mind about many things over the years. One of the things I really changed my mind about is salmon farming, because as a student of aquaculture, we always saw salmon as like the most advanced, like the best, and which usually goes hand in hand with better welfare, right? So you think, oh, salmon farming, because they under so much pressure from the consumers and industry, like governing bodies and stuff, they are they're the ones who actually try to improve and make claims to welfare, whereas in this part of the world, like they're not even trying. But actually, they are the most intensive forms of production too. And the more I found out about things, the more I realized, wait a second, this is not actually good at all. So I've like read that most salmon in farmed conditions are actually deaf. They're like inbred so much that they actually can't even hear. Many of them have like heart defects, or like some kind of like heart problems, which is almost comparable to Franken chickens, if you've heard of that. Like, yeah, so I've changed my mind about salmon as being like the gold standard for like high welfare.
I think it happens when it's being mass produced at that level. It's very hard to have good welfare. Just yeah.
So I think I take an issue with salmon because it's not a food security thing at all. We don't need salmon in our diets. So when we make the argument that it's not food security, the industry says, yeah, but it's like part of the fighting against obesity, which is just nonsense, really. Like, I don't think any obese people are like gonna turn. I don't know. I actually
Just fight against obesity.
exactly. Yeah. Well, they have to find a narrative, right? And then now, wow, yeah, now it's like all about lack of
Because they advertise it really like salmon is healthy for you, but then I think in documentary eating our way to extinction, they're talking about the what's the guy, Tony Robbins? He got a, what's the disease you get from eating too much salmon?
Oh,
Mercury poisoning.
did he really?
Yeah, so he said in a documentary, he talked about how he was eating like a lot of salmon and he developed mercury poisoning. So that's kind of like to show that salmon is depicted as something super healthy for you, but it can lead to mercury. Like it has high levels of mercury, which can lead to mercury poisoning. And then it's like if you want omega 3s, like just go for seaweed or stuff like that. So it comes at health risk. People like it has this picture. That's why maybe the obesity stuff, because it comes at this like if you just eat salmon, like you're healthy and you're good.
It's a big industry with a lot of money. I mean, the only aquaculture companies that are on like the like publicly listed indices are the salmon ones. Hardly any other industries managed to get up there. But I do want to share a couple of things that I think your listeners and viewers might find interesting. Like, I guess,
Yeah.
things that are close to my heart. So one is caviar, and one is tuna. So they're both things that I've worked on a lot. Whereas salmon, I really don't get into too much because there's so many people already trying to do things in there. So caviar, for those who don't know, actually used to be Russian and Eastern European uh, the delicacy that came from wild caught sturgeon fish. Now, sturgeon fish are now very endangered in the wild, so there's lots of regulations around against catching them, and definitely against taking their eggs. So they found ways to farm them. And not only have they found ways to farm them, China got into farming them, and now more than 50% of global caviar comes from farmed from China, from Chinese farms. And the price of caviar used to be something that no one could afford, or hardly anyone, but now it's very affordable, unfortunately. And in captivity, the females that they're used for this are sometimes kept for up to 17 years, which is crazy. Yeah, that's probably one of the food sectors that, uh, I mean, I don't know if we can call it cruelty, but it's definitely not nice for these dinosaur. Like, the sturgeon fish are the most amazing animals. They look like ancient. They look so ancient. They look. I mean, do you know what? No.
I've seen.
Snout. Yeah, they look. They don't look like any kind of fish. They're really majestic, and to keep them in barren tanks.
17. Why 17 years?
So for like the highest quality of caviar, that's how long it takes for the females to eggs to mature and array. Like, I don't know, I don't eat caviar,
But they probably have babies regularly, so why? Wait, well, I don't understand.
maturity, to reach sexual maturity for some of the, like, all animals are different, right?
Yeah.
This particular species, I think it's the Siberian sturgeon that takes the longest, but maybe it's beluga, but they take that long to mature sexually. So they're not actually even like
They're not having baby until then.
no. Just remember that fish spawn. So like the eggs go out and the males come and like fertilize them externally. So yeah, they're like it's like a different process. But yeah.
Yeah, but for them to develop eggs is what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, you meant that? Yeah. So they like for them to ripen,
What's ripen?
like to be. That's what the industry calls it. Like to be like just the right taste. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's crazy. So that's a form of like that's a part of aquaculture that I think is quite cruel.
But
Given
can,
that it's not a food security issue and it's definitely not an obesity issue, and like
it's never a food security issue. Just for
yeah, well, there's areas where you can't grow much. You know what I mean?
yeah, okay, but in general, like global fish consumption is not necessary. Like, and I'm not talking about rural local areas here in Kenya, for example. I'm just really talking about like
Sure. Yeah.
like for you and me.
Yeah, we can agree on that. Yeah.
But can I ask you about caviar? I've seen a video online where the female fish is sliced open and her eggs are like taken out, and it's so nasty and horrific. Do they die during that process?
Oh, it's amazing that you asked exactly the question that our project is all about. So, I think last year we published a paper on this. So there's something called no-kill caviar, right? So there's the farms that use no-kill methods because traditionally they were killing them for females, which is not great. But it's not great for them either because they're losing. Like it's not good for the farmers' livelihood, let's say. But a method was developed to ovulate the eggs, like they just take them out. And those methods are supposed to be like there's a lot of claims about them being more ethical and sustainable and humane and whatever, but actually, um, like if we look at literature, there's no real reason to think it's better. Not many of them die in the process. The anesthetics can be, unwrapped
How do they take the
eggs out like that way, so you can like suck it out with a tube.
out of their vagina?
Well, it's the equivalent of that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They suck it out with a tube.
Yeah, they can do. Yeah, it was a machine, or it depends how like advanced. Yeah, that's way, but it's thousands, right?
Okay.
Yeah, or you can cesarean cut. and
Oh,
take out.
okay.
Yeah, just like a human cesarean.
But that's when they die.
Yeah. Well, no, if you're killing them, you just kill the fish and you take the eggs. But if you want to do it no kill, it's either cesarean or like this way where they make a whole incision and they just remove them.
Like a C-section type of thing.
Exactly. So that's the actual C-section.
And how do they?
They don't always recover well. So that's why I'm saying to you that we're not actually sure that no kill is more ethical than what's it called? Traditional. What they call traditional, right? So that's a part of the food system that I think we could really do without, and I think that there will be promising cell-based alternatives to that, which would probably be interesting for the industry because they can just get the flavor just right. By the way, a lot of farmers don't want to do no kill because the taste is not as good as traditional. I don't know why killing the females and taking their eggs is much better, but apparently just I don't know, it's weird.
It must be the mind thing. It must not be like, how is that a real thing?
I really couldn't say.
Yeah.
But bluefin tuna is fascinating. So my favorite species is bluefin tuna. Like not to eat. I mean, like it's an animal. Like they're so awesome. Have you seen them? Like massive eyes.
Well,
You know the tunas? Do you know what tunas look like in general? Like they have their yeah. So exactly. The bluefin is the biggest, and they were like almost wiped out in Europe due to overfishing. They're the ones that the Japanese are using for sashimi. Like that's the highest, and the value is crazy. Like if you catch a 400 kilogram tuna, you could
400 kilograms.
get like well that's the maximum, but yeah. So like that's that's your salary for like the next that's a huge. There was really
Don't advertise this.
no, because now the fish aren't even that big anymore, but now they're farming them a lot more. So a lot more of the tuna is on.
They're farming them in.
Yeah. How they figured ways of actually farming tuna. The majority take the juveniles from the sea. They figure out where they're being like born and like spawned, and then they take the juveniles and they put them into like enclosures and they fatten them. It's called fattening or ranching. It's not actually true aquaculture or farming. But even now they've figured out a way to breed them in captivity. So that's like
How many tuna farms are there?
yeah, so it's a bit of a niche sector, it's high value, but it's niche. So Spain is a big player, Malta has some, Italy has some, Japan has a lot.
And how's the welfare there?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we've started to like get into, right? We haven't had any funding so far to actually look into it. We wrote a paper just based on like scientific studies, but based on the fact that tuna have not been domesticated, right? So salmon, there's been like many generations of salmon being farmed, so probably they're more accustomed to being in like these enclosures. But tuna are highly migratory species. They're big. They call them tigers of the sea. They're muscular. They move. They travel long distances. So to keep these in these enclosures is like clearly not going to be. But so with welfare, you're always trying to go as close to natural as possible, right? And there's no way that their behavioral needs are being met in these enclosures.
Are there any? Well, there's not been much research yet. Like any signs of stress?
Yeah. So I mean, we really want to get more access to farms. So far, we haven't had any tuna producers who are willing to let us actually go in, assess a fish, look at behavioral indicators, see if there's any major signs of distress. But unfortunately, it's a bit of a mafia. Like there's people who are like ex-mafia who work in the tuna industry. So we've been told to like kind of like be careful not to like kind of mess with it. Yeah, exactly. Like people who are ex-criminals. I mean, go to tuna farming because it's like a high, it's almost like
Is
the
there a lot
price
of
of
money?
yeah, exactly. There's a lot of money. So Mexico is a big place too. Like Baja California has a big player there. We had some conversation with them about welfare, but then they got spooked and I don't know what happened. But it's something I'm passionate about because I think high value, high likelihood of welfare issues, but also probably low hanging fruit in terms of being able to make changes because the industry has money. So there is money there. So I've been trying to pursue that for some years. So hopefully one day someone will answer my call.
It's always hard when you're fighting a system that's profitable. It's just like they value money over everything. That's why with my vegan advocacy, I try to tell them like people do care and they want to buy the best humane version of whatever's in the supermarket, and they, buy these labels like organic and free range or whatever, because they do care. But then it's just the farmers don't care. They care about what makes the most money, and that's what they do, and they'll try to hide the practice from consumers. That's kind of the battle in the West, and obviously it's different here, with everything's being more in the open of the fish suffering. But no, I'm happy that you are, seeing what needs to be changed and making those changes for fish. So thank you so much for that. Is there any notes anything that we still want to discuss?
I mean, I think that's a nice little like kind of a bit of a highlight or overview of the kind of things that the sector is up to and like the causes that I feel that we can probably do something about or should do something about like, what I call low hanging fruits, but I suppose your audience and listeners are not really consumers in any way. So the typical thing I would say is, like just inform yourself of what you're eating if you're eating it. Where's it coming from? How's it being caught?
But how can we consumers do that?
Right. So labels always will be the first place you start. That's the whole reason they exist. And there are ones that are more like
More
reliable.
marketing than others.
Yeah. There's some that are just a stamp of approval. Really, it's just nonsense. It's like goes to the highest bid. No, like if you pay the money, they give you a stamp, which doesn't really inspire confidence. But there are some that are reliable. So I would always say to go to look for those.
Which are?
So ASC and MSC, Aquaculture Stewardship Council, and the Marine Stewardship Council. Those are the two that I would say, because I worked there, so I know that they're reliable and they're trying their hardest to do something good in the sector. But also, so obviously, if you're gonna eat in the lower, if you are gonna eat, lower trophic species are always better. So like tilapia is a great one because they're not carnivorous, they're not being fed other fish. You can also not even put any fish meal, fish oil, which is a huge cause for concern within aquaculture. And our activists are mostly campaigning against that in aquaculture. Like the fact that you have to put all this wild fish. Do you know about the fish meal, fish oil problem? Okay, we definitely.
You know everything.
Well, we definitely have to talk about that because I think that's it. Like you can't talk about aquaculture without talking about that problem. So right now, one of the components of the pellets that's fed to salmon, especially, and other like carnivorous fish, they put like wild caught fish or like sardines, mackerels, low value species are caught in the wild and they're ground up and they're made into like fish meal.
Low value species.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they call them. Yeah. So it's like, and not only that, the worst part is that some studies have shown in the last couple of years that they're catching these fish off the coasts of Africa, and it's actually affecting the food security of those countries. But they're catching these fish, grinding them up, and putting them into like salmon in like Norway and Chile and God knows where else, which is obviously raises ethical concerns, sustainability issues, all these different things. I have to say I haven't worked too much on that, but I just had to mention that as one of the areas. Like the first thing the industry gets attacked on is their use of wild caught fish. Fish, what they call the fish in, fish out ratio, or FIFO, I think they call it. Yeah.
I didn't even think about the fact that these fish eat other fish, which is like how there's the food come from. I didn't even think about that.
Actually, I haven't mentioned that, but in the case of tuna, it's worse because they get the whole fish. So they catch sardines, like freeze them, and they just defrost them, I guess, and give them to the tuna. So like, is there any? Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
The whole cycle is
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, like what we do to maintain the food system is crazy, I think. Like across all.
What we do to maintain our like cultural food, like we're destroying oceans, animals, our health, everything for the sake of tradition and what we're used to and taste and whatever.
True. That's why I say to you, like, I personally changed my mind a lot over the years. And when I come to these kind of things, I remember, oh, okay, wow, I could actually have things very differently.
Yeah, I'll give you that chickpea tuna salad recipe that I told you about. One more question that came up to mind while we're talking about like the industry standard is just like how long do these fish at what age are they slaughtered is one question.
Like across all species, you mean like the average? So there's short cycles, like tilapia are like, 3 to 6 months, our typical production cycle, which is actually quite long compared to chickens, which are like, a month or 30 days or whatever. But obviously, in the case of tuna and salmon, they're multi-year processes. So it could be a 3-4 year. Well, so salmon is 2 years, 1 to 2 years, and tuna is probably, depending how big you want them, at least a couple of years. Yeah.
That's still so much suffering, right? Them being confined and are they cramped together? Like, is it very much like when you go to these fish farms, you see that there's too many fish in one pond, like that type of thing?
Yeah. So I was talking to some aquatic veterinarians not long ago about this. And for salmon, they say that stocking density, what they call stocking density, doesn't really matter because even if you give them more space, they always end up being like they like to be in one part only, or they like to be so like almost giving them more space. They don't even use the space you give them. That's the argument.
This sounds BS. No, it sounds BS. Like, because it's like they're putting us in this room and like we want from comfort. We want to be together with some other people. I don't know. Just give an example. And the increased room, they're like, oh, these humans, they don't really care too much about space.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I'm convinced by it, but I'm saying that's like the vets themselves. So that's like people who are supposed to care about animals.
Okay.
So that was the Aquatic Veterinarian Association, I think, or like one of those big bodies of the professionals. So someone really senior. And the other argument is that they not directly related, but that like I think I might have told you this the other day that fish reproduce, their natural strategy is to reproduce in large numbers because they know that large numbers are gonna die.
Right. Of the fittest.
Yeah, kind of, right? So that's like literally they spawn millions of eggs at a time. Most of them die, not most, but many, and that's part of the strategy. That's why they have so many. Whereas like, sturgeon, for example, probably their strategy is to mature slower. They might have fewer eggs. I actually haven't studied much about sturgeon biology in a while, so now you're making me realize I need to go and read up about that. Yeah, actually, yeah. So that's why they mature slower. It's just different strategies that they have. Yeah.
But then what about the you said about the eggs that you're saying that they have so many eggs in captivity, and then what did you mean on that point?
For sturgeon or just in general?
You're saying that these fish are having so many eggs, like millions of eggs for their so that their species survives, but then if they're having these number of eggs in captivity in fish farms, all these do they all survive?
More survive for sure. Yeah. So it's done in like what they call hatcheries. So the human intervention and there's technologies that ensure that more are incubated if they were not well kept or whatever. Again, you can't generalize. I didn't say this at all during this session, but there's so many species of fish, the fishes really.
Fishes.
Yeah,
Fishes is the correct term for the multiple of fishes. Not a lot of people know this.
or like species. We're talking about multiple species. It's always fishes. That's the correct one. Yeah, but not necessarily multiple individuals of the same ones. Anyway, semantics in some cases, but um, there's like thousands of species of fishes and other underwater creatures, and we farm. We only farm very few, but still, like compared to all the ones that exist. But even then, we have like 400 or more that are being farmed. Whereas with cows, goats, pigs, there's only one. Anywhere in the world, only like different strains of cows, but it's the same concept more or less. So, in the case of fishes, each one has its complete own biology, different
Needs
yeah,
also.
completely different needs. So you really can't generalize.
So then fishing industry should know this. The aquaculture should know this, no?
Yeah.
Do they know this?
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, to be fair, the high value industries, they put a lot of money into research. Into research and
But just in order to have the best fish.
of course. Yeah. Ultimately, they do not believe that this is something that they don't see anything wrong with it. So yeah. But we definitely like the welfare argument always lands well with those sort of industries because they think it's good for their own,
Is it for when you try to inspire them to take more welfare initiatives? Do you kind of tell them that the consumer will also appreciate this, or is it just that the fish will like that the fish will be more better and healthier or whatever? Like, what's kind of the angle that you take to convince them to have better welfare?
So it depends where in the world we're working. But so the Caviar project that we're doing now, we were very much saying, well, you guys are the so-called highest welfare sector of aquaculture subsector. Would you mind if we, dig into that, like to highlight your good work? And that's what we're doing right now. We haven't discovered any like practices that we're
But I mean, like, do they get like some type of sticker that says better welfare and that the consumers buy?
from the certification that I was talking about. Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's a sticker.
So they have motivation to have better welfare.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and they have access to better markets. Yeah.
Okay, good. Because that's what I was wondering. Like, do they actually have motivation if they're already running it and it runs fine? Like, do they have motivation somehow external for their prices? Because that's the only way to get them to change right now is if they see the better, that is more profitable, kind of.
So I could just tell you one example of like how tactics have worked recently. So nothing that I've been directly involved in because it's not on my work, but there's a group called the International Council for Animal Welfare that's they're activists, right? So they were ex-Mercy for Animals people, and they started their own organization, and they have been using very effective tactics to put pressure. The ones that I know about are like UK supermarkets, like Morrison's, Tesco, Lidl, Lidl not yet, but Iceland, which is one of the big traditional. They're just it was mostly frozen foods that they used to sell, but they have ASC certification for the shrimp, and they put but they don't. They were still using a technique called Eyestalk Ablation. Actually, I could talk about that, but basically by putting pressure and protesting the street and embarrassing their CEO and so on, they've now committed to phasing out both Eyestalk Ablation and slaughter using ice. So they're bringing electrical stunning. But Eyestalk Ablation is one of these horrible practices, actually. So what the industry was doing, the shrimp farming industry was doing, to make females breed more, they were cutting the stalk of their eye or burning it, so that they would produce more hormones. Yeah, it's kind of brutal. It's not particularly necessary as well, so that's one reason why it's just the science hasn't shown us that big an improvement on natural production. So now it's being phased out in many Western food chains. Like obviously, it's coming from Asia and South America and stuff, but they're putting pressure on their suppliers to not use that practice. So that's an example of how pressure can work.
I think we're almost towards the end because we're both kind of burning out. But one more question that just came up is like, do you have any statistic of the amount of fish that people eat, whether it's from fish farming or from aquaculture? Is there a statistic out from like if
Per capita consumption.
like is it like the fish that people consume is probably very different per country, but the fish that people consume generally, is that more from fish farms or more from like, because I there's a statistic, for example, in the US 99% of meat, dairy, and eggs comes from factory farms. Do you get what I mean? So how much of the fish that's being consumed comes from fish farming versus aquaculture?
So yeah, aquaculture, yeah, aquaculture, yeah, like with water. So actually, that's an interesting question because the UK seafood industry is always trying to get UK consumers to diversify what they eat. I'm talking about the UK because I know this
Fair enough.
market well. That's where I lived for the last 10 years, and they're very like people in the UK. Maybe the Netherlands is the same.
Yeah.
They only eat very few things. Like they like their fish and chips, which is either cod, haddock, and halibut. There's scampi, which comes from these like nephrops, what they're called now. It's like a type of lobster or shrimp
Okay.
family crustaceans. That's just a tail that's taken
Yeah.
everywhere. Also a very horrific sector, but let's not get into that. So they eat scampi, they eat fish and chips, which are three species, and they'll eat salmon, smoked salmon,
Right.
typically.
And
And
shrimp,
that's
right?
yeah, oh yeah, true shrimp, yeah, of course, right.
Goes
So
up.
yeah, that's farmed from Asia. So there's the ones for fish and chips are all wild caught, and same with scampi. So in the UK
Okay.
case, it'd be mostly wild caught except salmon.
Because I love to make the argument that the people are depleting the oceans and killing the oceans and killing wildlife in the ocean when they eat fish. So I can I still say that, or are most fish coming now from farms?
The thing is, I mean, I always tell people, like, if you look at my LinkedIn, maybe I also told you this the other day, but like, people think I'm bipolar sometimes because, like, my it list, like, half the time I'm in places like this where I'm around people who are like abolitionists and all this, and
What if people calling us abolitionists? We just want to have
not
kindness
you,
for
not
everyone.
you, but
And you just
many people here, no problem. Many people here are like that, but
much
um,
like that.
the rest of my life, I'm around very pro-industry people, including like very smart people, high-level professors that done a lot of research on this. And to be fair, it's very hard to make the argument that you're saying, that they're destroying oceans because many places, in many places, the industry is trying to up its game. So I would like,
But we've all seen there's a new David Attenborough documentary.
even then, look at all the outcry that came out from both sides, right? The same with Seaspiracy, right? Seaspiracy was obviously not taken as seriously, but like this one with David Attenborough, he singled out certain cases, but there's lots and lots of stories of people who are trying good. I do believe there is a world in which fishing can be done much better and can be a source of protein. That's my personal belief, having seen examples of how it's can be done well. But you're right, in many, many cases, it's not. Far too many other animals die
Yeah.
as a result of that, and like bottom trawling is something that
Bottom drawing that.
even then there are people who defend it, people who have studied it very well and still say there's been huge improvements, but that's not enough, right? So I'm with you that like we can't tolerate things just because they're getting better. Like
Yeah.
there's too many people who are like kind of okay with a little incremental improvements, but I'm with you on that.
It has too many negative consequences, and like at the end of the day, as I am an animal rights activist, so in that sense, like I do view that every single fish who dies is unnecessary in my opinion. I understand that there's like better ways of doing things, but it's like why you're finding the better way to do the wrong thing is still my opinion. But I do understand what you're saying, that there's the very horrific practices and there's a little bit better.
Yeah, like well, obviously, I try to be fair to industry where I can because I have seen lots of great people do very great things to go out of their way. I mean, to minimize some of the worst practices. So I do try to give them credit. And there's people who's like, it's traditional livelihoods as well, right? There's people who come fishing communities, and
But that's not like for me the target. The target is like the fishing industry, which has pollutes the ocean with plastic, with ghost gear. Like for me, all that stuff is more my where I want to focus my energies, because I'm not gonna go to the communities and tell them to stop fishing if that's their livelihood. For me, it's people who eat sashimi in fancy Japanese restaurants and are, you know, because we don't need to be oceans give us life. We if the ocean is empty, like we're also very close to dying ourselves, you know? So all that stuff, even the fact that we come from fishes originally and like the evolution type thing, like we're all connected. Even if fishes are different from us as mammals, it's still they still suffer, they still experience life, and I want to see a world where we don't have to do that. But I'm thankful well, till we get to that world, I'm thankful for the work that you're doing as well.
Well, thank you, and I guess you want to wrap up, right? But like, yeah,
I'm hungry.
yeah. I know. I appreciate that. I know. It was really good to have this chat. It's always good to talk to people who are from the other side, let's say, and who maybe I guess don't think about these issues or are not aware of the exact things that are going on.
Sure.
And people like me who are actually trying to make things better, even though I totally hear your messaging. It's just we take different approaches to get to hopefully the same goal.
Yeah, inshallah. Well, thank you so much, Wasseem. It was a real pleasure talking to you, and hopefully we can do more of this content, maybe.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into the Changemakers podcast. My name is Farah Amber, and I hope that you enjoyed the episode. If you did, it would really mean the world to me if you could rate the podcast, and also remember to follow the podcast to stay updated on new episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.